Hey, my keto challengers, happy Friday and welcome to day 5. It's Coach R coming to you a little late on Friday evening. I was trying to make sure that I got all of the ruckus and the noise from downstairs out before I sat down and I talked to you guys about our tip for today. So our tip for today is all about fat. Now, honestly, I could probably do about 2 or 3 or 4 little posts or podcasts about fat in of itself. Because it's such an important topic and it's so crucial to understand from a ketogenic diet perspective and also from a wellness perspective. There's so much new research and not so new research, but is just resurfacing research about fat and healthy fats to promote wellness and health that it's just amazing to share. So I'm going to touch upon a little bit of things today, give you a little bit of background, and also talk about what's important from a ketogenic diet perspective. But if you are interested in learning a little bit more about fats or have any sort of burning questions about it, I'd be happy to answer. Ping me. I'd be also happy to point you in the right direction and give you a couple different books and resources that I found interesting about fat and fat in our diet. But for the sake of this post and what it means during this challenge, the ketogenic diet we already know is ultra low carb, a moderate protein, and a high healthy fat diet. Now, what is healthy fat? Without getting too convoluted or too scientific, there are basically 2 buckets of fat: saturated fats and unsaturated fats. Unsaturated fats are then broken down into monounsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats, trans fats, and then mega trans fats. Okay, so to make things less complicated, let's focus on the saturated fats for the most part. Saturated fats, you probably have heard, are considered the bad fats. Well, not the case anymore. Saturated fats have actually that were once vilified have actually been vindicated and is now shown to help support a healthy immune system. Our bodies rely on fats for a lot of our metabolic processes. Every single cell in our body is made up of a cell membrane that is made up of triglycerides and fats. Okay, our brains are about 70% fats. So if you aren't giving your body the right building blocks, the best kind of building blocks to build our cells from a fundamental perspective, then essentially you're gonna get mediocre cells, everything from our skin cells to our liver cells and all of our cells. You're gonna get mediocre cells that are made up of mediocre types of fats. I actually have a whole different post for a different day about polyunsaturated fats and some of the red flags that are already being talked about in the scientific community today about polyunsaturated fats and vegetable oils. We'll go into that a little bit later, but for today, let's focus on saturated fats. These were once bad fats, but now have been vilified. In 2015, the USDA dietary guidelines basically said, and I quote, "There is no appreciable relationship between the consumption of dietary cholesterol and serum cholesterol." Serum cholesterol is the cholesterol when you get your blood drawn from and you do your labs with your doctor. That is what they are measuring, the cholesterol within your body. There is no appreciable relationship between the consumption of dietary cholesterol and serum cholesterol. It is actually proven that it is healthy for our cell makeup and our metabolism. Unfortunately, in the 1960s, a doctor by the name of Dr. Ansel Keys, who wasn't actually a lipid or cholesterol doctor, did a studies called the 7 country studies where he looked at serum cholesterol and the rates of heart attack over 7 different countries around the world and what they ate. And he reported that these countries, there was a correlation between saturated fats and heart attack. Unfortunately, The 7-country studies was actually a 22-country study, and Dr. Ansel Keys failed to report the results from the other countries, the other 15 countries that did not support his hypothesis. That's just flawed and unfortunate. And during that time in the United States, finding a reason for heart attacks, which were on the rise at that time, was project number one from a government-backed perspective. So he was feeling the pressure to come up with a solution, and unfortunately, his solution, the 7 Keys study, actually turned our whole dietary guidelines upside down. That's kind of the background about fats for you. Okay, so saturated fats are your butters, your meat, the fat that you get just from eating meat, lard, tallow. Those are all really great for your bodies because they don't get oxidized in our bodies the way that unsaturated fats do, and so they're resistant to heat, and so our bodies can basically use them, metabolize them, and utilize them for energy. And when you're thinking about a ketogenic diet where you're shifting your energy from carbohydrates and sugars to fats, you want to make sure that you are consuming the highest quality of fats there are. Okay, so fats are considered a lever. Okay, so yesterday when we talked about carbohydrates, I talked about carbohydrates being a target. That is something that you must hit. 20 grams of net carbs or under, you must hit. That's a target. Fats is actually a lever. So when you are thinking about what you're eating on a daily basis, fats keep you full. They give you enough energy to sustain you until your next meal. So only eat enough fats, and these are the butters, the lards, the tallows, avocados, coconut oil, avocado oil, olives. Those are all really great sources of natural, wholesome fats. Only eat those if you are hungry. If you're finding yourself in between your morning, your morning drink, if you're on classic, your morning drink and your lunch, if you are finding yourself hungry, or between lunch and your 3 p.m. drink, then up your fats. Okay, that is what the tip for today meant. Up your fats if you are hungry. If you're finding yourself hungry or like I can't wait until my next meal, then add a little bit of avocado oil on your salad. Add about 1/4 of an avocado to your salad or to your burger or whatever you're eating. Those are really great ways to up your healthy fat consumption, okay? So I did get a question the other day about not getting enough fats and being worried that you aren't getting enough fats and you're possibly getting too much protein during the day. So a couple years ago when the ketogenic diet took off, and it became a lifestyle and a diet for a lot of people. A lot of coaches and a lot of people in the early stages of the ketogenic diet as a mainstream lifestyle talked about macronutrients, and getting enough fats was integral. Okay, they also talked about if you got too much protein, then your body would transform the protein into glucose, which would throw you out of ketosis. That was definitely a philosophy that was touted early on. And what has been shown now, even through a keto diet, keto carnivore diet, or a full carnivore diet, is there is no such thing as too much protein. You heard me right. There's no such thing as too much protein. Yes, your body will convert some protein into glucose by your liver through a process called gluconeogenesis. Okay, and this was probably something you've heard in the past. If you've done keto about 2 years ago, 1 year ago, it was a very big thing. Don't eat too much protein because it'll turn into glucose. The body knows how much glucose it needs, and the liver will produce just the right amount of glucose. for what is needed. There are certain metabolic functions, and there are certain cells and organs in our body that need glucose, okay? Every other cell and organ in our body can utilize ketones and ketone bodies day and night, all right? But the few that need glucose, and red blood cells are one that need glucose, and also the brain, surprisingly, can work off of both glucose and ketones. But what is found, is kind of an interesting sidebar, is people with traumatic brain injuries or Parkinson's disease or dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or even epilepsy, concussions even, people with traumatic brain injuries, what they found, scientists have found, is that the brain actually loses the capacity to utilize glucose for energy. And the brain, as much as energy, it's an energy suck, okay? It only accounts for something like 2% of our body weight, but it accounts for about 40% of our energy needs on a daily basis. And what's interesting too about the brain is there are no pain receptors on the brain. Sure, you can get a headache, but that's not in the brain, okay? If we get inflammation in our joints, we'll feel that. If we get inflammation or a bruise on our muscles, we will feel that. But our brain, surprisingly, we cannot feel, okay? So what they find is that people with traumatic brain injuries or brain ailments like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, they lose the capacity to utilize glucose for energy. And what happens with people eating the mainstream standard American diet is that eventually the brain cells atrophy and die. If you look at a person with Alzheimer's disease or with advanced stages of Alzheimer's, you will see brain cells that have actually died, and that is their capacity, losing their capacity to remember and retain information, okay? But the great thing is that these people and the brain can actually utilize a secondary source of energy, which is ketones. So in the 1920s, the ketogenic diet was actually a prescribed diet and lifestyle for people with epilepsy, specifically children who had epileptic seizures that were not, they were not responding to any sort of the conventional medicines at the time. So it was a very popular, prescription lifestyle for that. So to go off on a tangent, sorry guys, I told you I could talk about this forever. But so certain cells and organs in our bodies utilize glucose, but the key point and the thing to remember is that the liver knows how much to produce. Now, remember, I said glucose and not carbohydrates. You have it absolutely right. A lot of people will say, a lot of doubters of the ketogenic diet will say, well, you need glucose. You need carbohydrates. You need carbohydrates as an athlete and as an Olympian and a top performer. Your body, certain organs need carbohydrates. They don't. They need glucose. And your body can convert the protein into glucose as much as it needs through the process of gluconeogenesis. So as long as you're eating protein, then your body is getting the types of fuel that it needs, whether it be ketones or glucose. So you need not worry about that. So my philosophy is utilize fats as a lever. Only eat enough so that you can be full before your next meal. Because if you eat too much dietary fats, then your body will no longer uncouple your body fats to use for energy. And again, our body fats, from a primal perspective, our ancestors, the reason we had body fats is because there were moments of famine. This was way long time ago, right? When we were hunter-gatherers, or maybe even like 200, no, probably not. It really just, and it also depends on what culture you're from, right? Because as a Filipino, whose family lived in the country. Food was scarce sometimes because money was scarce, okay? But even going farther back from a primal nutritional perspective, fat was basically stored energy for the winter, okay? So if we eat too much dietary fat, if you go fat, you go a little bit fat heavy, and you put your heavy whipping cream and then your avocado, then your body won't uncouple your body fat. But that's what we want it to do, okay? So use fat as a lever, hit carbohydrates as a target, stay under 20 grams a day, and consume enough protein to keep you full. Consume the right amount of the right kinds of protein. You might want to try some fattier cuts of meat, like some ribeyes or some chicken thighs, bone in with the skin, okay? Because you're getting collagen and you're getting all of those really natural goodness from a lot of those. Like the bones and the oxtails and all of those things, okay? So those are really great for us. They're great for our hair. They're great for our skin. They're great for us metabolically. Okay, I think I just talked your ear off. If you guys have any questions for me about fats, as you can see, I can talk about it all day long. Ping me. Let me know. Post it on here. I'd be happy to send you some resources. I'd be happy to answer it as quickly as I can. Also, I have several books that I love to recommend, and if you're part of our Go 30 challenge, then we also have a little book club that we do, so we'll choose a book to talk about during the 30 days, and then we get to kind of debunk things ourselves. It's kind of cool, and it's kind of nerdy because that's the way that I am. All right, so there you go. FATS, day 5, halfway through. It is Friday, it is the weekend. Build upon all of the tips and tricks that we have talked about so far during this challenge, okay? So get your water in, get your electrolytes in, plan for this weekend, okay? If you are out and about, pack an extra nap packet. If you are going on a bike ride and you know who you are and you're gonna rock it at like 30 miles, then pack your energy bar, the ones that we talked about, pack your extra nats, and go after it, okay? So ditch the carbs, up the fats if you're hungry, and that's another thing. If you're going on a bike ride or if you're doing any sort of rigorous activity this weekend, then add a little bit of fats on there. And it's okay to add an extra serving of protein to your meal on that particular day, all right? Don't be scared to test out what works for you. Please let me know if you have any questions. I will come on here and answer them, and I'll post them if I think that everybody else might benefit from knowing that answer. All right, so keto on. Happy Friday, happy weekend. I will be back on tomorrow for day 6, and you guys have a good evening. Take care.